So as many of you already might know, because I used to do videos on this channel reviewing this television series, one of my favorite TV series of all time is HBO's Game of Thrones. Not all the seasons, obviously not all the seasons. It's one of those shows that kind of reached unparalleled heights before falling to the earth in the most embarrassing way possible. But the first 4 seasons of television are inarguably some of the best television ever to make it to the small screen. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because what's been going on in our society these past couple of months, ever since the death of that saint or something, I don't remember exactly who, I just remember that you have to steal a TV in his honor, we have been following a model that is indicative of a sequence in Season 1. And of course I'm talking about the execution of Ned Stark. Spoilers for a television show that aired in 2011 that's based on a book that came out in like 1999 if you haven't seen it. But in this sequence, Ned Stark confesses to crimes that he did not commit in order to get mercy from a petulant tyrant. However, rather than receiving the mercy that he was promised, he is executed for his trouble. And this is to show us that this petulant tyrant should be nowhere near power, because it's not even a politically savvy maneuver for King Joffrey to do at the time, to take this liege lord's head. But he does it anyway because he's power mad, and again, he's completely unqualified for the power position that he has inherited. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now in our society with these Black Lives Matter riots and the activists that are at the forefront of these riots. Now, before I get into this a little bit further, I do want to thank everybody who jumped over and followed me on Parler. Parler promises to be a sane alternative to Twitter, and as Twitter's ratcheting up the censorship, it's fantastic that an alternative that actually looks viable has opened up. I really appreciate you guys jumping over. I'm also on BitChute Minds. You can follow me on Twitter and the standard social medias too. Just check the links in the description. And I also want to say that my statement about Lauren Chen not being able to pronounce the name Parler and it actually being Parlay and the company changing their name were 100% factual and not a joke in any way, shape, or form. And you should still reply her and tell her that it's actually pronounced parlay, like the French pronunciation, that for some reason she just can't seem to understand. Now, we've seen this forced confession and apology tour for crimes that were not committed, things that weren't crimes, a number of times since this rioting has started. One of the more notable ones up until this Jenna Marbles one was Mike Gundy, who was the coach of Oklahoma State University, who apologized for the sin, and please, viewer discretion advised for the image I'm about to show you, of wearing a t-shirt of a news organization that people on the far left just didn't like. I know it's horrible. I know that was a lot to take in. I know that shirt was incredibly difficult to look at. And just imagine if you had to look at that, but you didn't watch OAN because you disagreed with that news network. And just imagine how you would have felt to have seen this coach that you probably never heard of wearing this shirt of a news organization that you probably didn't know that much about, that you're angry about because they support President Donald Trump. Shameful, horrible, and incredibly difficult. Now, Gundy still might lose his job, even though he did this embarrassing forced apology.
I had a great meeting with our team today. Our players expressed their feelings as individuals and as team members. They helped me see through their eyes how the t-shirt affected their hearts.
Even though that he had a powwow with like his teammates where he listened to their feedback and essentially listened to one player lead a bunch of other players in a whining session about how they were offended at some segments of OAN and how they portrayed certain groups of people according to this person. But Gundy apologized nonetheless, and he still might be fired, but you know, whatever. It's progress. He apologized for the sin that was not a sin and he shouldn't have apologized for, and that's progress in our country. Now, we've seen the same sort of forced apology thing, despite the fact that this person committed no crime, from quarterback Drew Brees, who's the Super Bowl winning quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And the reason I bring this up is because he won that Super Bowl post-Katrina, and he's probably the single figure most responsible for keeping that team in the city of New Orleans, but he had to apologize for honoring the service of both of his grandfathers because a bunch of people were attributing malice and pretending like Drew Brees said a bunch of things that he did not factually say or even come remotely close to saying. But he's apologized, his wife's apologized, everybody in the Drew Brees family has apologized despite the fact that they've committed no crimes, and there are still people calling for Drew Brees to be replaced by whatever crappy backup the Saints happen to have. But now the mob can add to their body count long-term YouTuber Jenna Marbles. Now you might be familiar with Jenna Marbles because she's been on the platform for almost 11 years. At some point, I believe she was the #1 subscribed to YouTube channel, or at the bare minimum, the #1 subscribed to female YouTube channel, and I think she held the female title for much longer. And she recently released a long 11-minute apology video where she just looked completely and totally beaten down, where she apologized for every joke she ever told because somebody is possibly offended by stuff that she might have said in the past, despite the fact that the majority of it was not offensive to anybody with any level of sanity.
All right, so I get it. Feel like we're at a time where we are purging ourselves of anything and everything toxic. And I'm being requested that I address things that I've done in my past.
Now, it's important to note before we dive into this video that there are certain things that she apologized for that you could argue were wrong, but those things that she apologized for are things that she had already apologized for in the past, and she's already taken down those videos previously. So she's getting hate for things that she's already taken accountability for and already personally removed from her channel recently, because people are just going after everybody for all their past sins, despite the fact that they have come forward and sought redemption for those past sins. So even though you're going to probably be able to claim, like, oh, she dressed as Nicki Minaj and she did blackface and that's wrong and immoral, you have to remember that that's something that she already acknowledged and already apologized for. It's like the Kevin Hart tweets where people got mad at him because they're like homophobic tweets from 2009, even though he apologized for them in like 2014, 2015, 2016, and then they were re-brought up in 2019 when he was set to host the Oscars. That's the situation with anything that could even be argued to be generally offensive. However, it's important to note that offensive is an irrelevant term, because offense is taken, not given. And a lot of the other things that Jenna Marbles apologized for in this video is absolutely, completely ridiculous, and in no way, shape, or form warrants an apology of any sort, let alone her apologizing, completely breaking down, and pledging to not make videos on her channel ever again because she's so afraid of offending people.
Yeah, there's things in my past I'm not proud of. And I'm getting a lot of tweets from people saying, why have you privated all these old videos? And I've spent a lot of the last few days privating almost all of my old content. And I'm sorry if any of that holds any nostalgia for you, but I'm literally not trying to put out negative things into the world.
One of the things that she apologized for was a video that she previously apologized for, which was a comedic take where she took jabs at overly promiscuous women, is what we're going to call them. And the reason she is re-apologizing for that, and the reason she apologized for that previously, is because people have no sense of humor, and they take any instance where you're mocking somebody for being overly promiscuous as shaming. And you know what word I'm missing in this sentence, but shaming. And you can't shame anybody, even if their behavior is objectively observable as destructive. You're not allowed to shame them, because you can't judge anybody. I mean, we're all judging Jenna Marbles, and we're watching everything she did, and we're retroactively enforcing new rules against Jenna Marbles, even though in the context when she made those videos, those were totally fine. And in fact, they are still totally fine, because jokes are totally fine. But you can't judge anybody for their behavior, even if psychological surveys show that that kind of behavior, especially in that much of a scale that she was describing comedically in that video, is actually destructive. But you can't even make jokes about that. She wasn't even trying to make that point. She wasn't even trying to assert anything to be factually true about that type of behavior, but she's still apologizing for it, and she looks horribly depressed, like she's been taken hostage in order to do so. Now, while I could see somebody trying to stretch those old videos into some kind of shaming thing, like it's a political statement that she was making into promiscuous women, even though it was not, and it was just made in a joking context, and you should get thicker skin if you're going to be on the internet, The next thing that she apologized for is even more absurd, and these were comedic videos that she would make about girls being this way versus boys being that way. And the reason she apologized for it is because it doesn't recognize gender fluidity or transgenderism or some absurd social justice woke reason that is complete and total nonsense.
Just, you know what? Put it on my tab. Here's another thing I'm sorry for. I'm also sorry for, I used to make a lot of content about like what girls do and what guys do. And I know at the time there are a lot of people that enjoyed those videos, but I have privated all of them because I don't think that making jokes about your gender is funny. And I know that there's a lot of people that struggle with their identity and that have varying fluid identities or anything. And I just don't want content in the world that's like, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. You know, it doesn't make sense. It can be hurtful, it can be harmful, and I don't want it there.
Jenna, what are you doing? There was nothing wrong with those videos back then, and to be clear, there is nothing wrong with those videos today. You can make comedic jokes about the general differences between men and women. You can notice patterns and use what you notice about those patterns in order to make comedic bits. I don't know why you're apologizing. And if you are one of these people that's in this demographic that's less than 1/10 of 1%, you can take a joke. It's okay. You don't have to go out of your way to be offended by something that was clearly not made in any way, shape, or form to offend you. The idea that transgender people who go through this whole process of remaking their body in order to fit themselves better are angry and seeking out jokes on the internet from years ago about generalizations between men and women is actually more offensive, I would think, to those transgender people than you talking about the general differences between men and women. These people are not made of sugar, and jokes are not rain. They will not melt if they come into contact with jokes. That's not how that works. Offense, again, is taken, not given. If you're offended by something, that's a you problem, not a problem of the person speaking. You can talk to that person, you can have a two-way conversation, you can explain to them how you feel, but ultimately, if you're reading bad intent where there is none, that is 100% on you, not on the person who is delivering the message. That's absolutely ridiculous, and it's honestly embarrassing that Jenna Marbles is apologizing for skits that are still 100% fine today. And if they weren't fine today, then there would be something wrong with our society today, not something wrong with our society back then.
Because I just don't want anyone to feel upset about anything. I don't want to contribute to that. I don't care. I just don't care. I don't want someone to watch something and feel hurt or offended now for any reason.
Jenna, what are you doing? Stop apologizing. Everybody knows that you were not trying to offend anybody. And in reality, you didn't really offend anybody. You offended a small segment of the population that are getting professionally offended on behalf of other marginalized groups. There's a reason that your comedy sketches allowed you to rise to the top of YouTube. There's a reason that you were so successful, because you appeal broadly to a lot of people. Stop apologizing for that. You did nothing wrong. In fact, the only thing that you did wrong throughout the whole course of your career is this apology right here. This is the thing that you did wrong. You should never apologize to these people, because these are the same people who will accept your apology and then chop off your head regardless of your apology, just to show you that they have power over you. These people never built anything. You built a successful channel. You built a successful career. You appealed to a broad number of people. You have a dedicated fan base. I'm sure you've raised tons of money for charity. I'm sure the broader business that is Jenna Marbles employs a bunch of people. Do not apologize to the small minority of people, and by minority I just mean small group of people, mostly white progressives, that are offended by your content retroactively on behalf of these marginalized groups. That's complete and total nonsense. You did nothing wrong except apologize.
The only thing I would like to say is that I'm just a person trying to navigate the world the same way that you are. So I don't always know what's right, what's wrong, what the truth is, and I'm just trying my best.
I mean, seriously, Jenna, have you completely lost your marbles?
I just can't exist on this channel. Hopefully I've taken down anything that would upset someone. And I hope you know that that's just not my intent. That's not what I ever set out to do.
So Jenna has decided that she's going to quit YouTube over this because she doesn't want to offend anybody ever again. And the best way to not offend anybody ever again is to stop existing on the internet, because people can literally be offended by anything at any moment, which is why "I'm offended" is one of the most worthless statements that can ever come out of a human person's mouth. Jenna, you should not quit YouTube. You should have never made this apology video. Unless this apology video is a literal joke on the hostage apology videos that other creators are making at this moment, it should not exist. You did nothing wrong except apologize. And honestly, the people that are going after her for posts largely made in 2011 that she already apologized for way closer to the date that she made those videos is completely ridiculous. The fact that she feels the need to apologize for completely benign sketches that talk about the general differences between men and women, as if talking about that is now somehow off limits because we can't acknowledge the general differences between men and women, that's completely absurd. But hey, those are just my thoughts on this whole scenario. Maybe you have a different opinion, in which case you would be wrong, because my thoughts and opinions are actual literal facts. But feel free to let me know your completely wrong opinion down in the comments below. As always, you guys know what to do. If you like this video, showing by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Support me via the support links. I've gotten a lot more support recently, and I really appreciate it. Follow me on the social medias. They're going to be linked in the description box of this video. I have alternative ones, mainstream ones. Follow me on all of them. Till next time.